If I said to you, where was training on your list of priorities on a daily basis? And that's the important question. That's the important part of the question, actually. On a daily basis, how important is improving your skills or the skills of your team or your leaders or your managers, depending, obviously, the context you're watching this in? How important is it on a daily basis? Because in business, I think we're actually seeing a change happening again after many years. But for most people, if you said to someone, how important is developing someone? They would cognitively understand it's a really good, useful thing. But on a daily basis, when we have pressures of work and we have deadlines and there's a certain amount of cash flow in the business, it tends to get put off. It gets put off because our brain tends to focus on the here and now issues that we've got to deal with, which is in some respects obviously correct. But how do we stop those problems happening again? And that's usually by developing people so they don't make mistakes, or they are more skillful at making sure these things don't happen. And how do projects happen? How do projects successfully get completed? It's because the project doesn't get distracted by day-to-day problems and issues. Because whether it's training or completion of projects, the same principle of here and now versus the future, when we get the future reward, is exactly the same. We know that we need to be doing something to push a project forward, but when something happens which is critical now, projects get delayed, people get taken off them to deal with this problem, and we lose that flow, and the timeline slips, and sometimes it never happens at all. So this is how our human brain works. Most people are focused on, we need to deal with stuff now, and our brain wants us to do that. So the reason why I'm talking about this in terms of the context of training is because most training, you don't see the reward, especially higher level training, that you don't see the reward for a little while. If you are putting some money into training, most of the time companies will sort of say, yeah, okay, it's a good idea to do this with the skills training. Meaning you've got a new piece of equipment or there's a new software package that needs to be learnt. The training is done, and then you can see the fact at the end of the day, this person, this person can now operate this piece of machinery or this software package. So we tend to like to see, there's my investment, there's my result. Who wouldn't? It's certainty. And certainty is the emotion that human beings crave more than anything, by the way. We want to know that if I'm going to spend this money, I'm going to get the result. So here's the problem with longer distance training is two problems. One, it's further away, so you can't necessarily spot that. You can't feel that and recognize you're going to get that reward quickly. But also, some trainings you don't get an instant A to B. And this is especially true with developing leaders and managers, and especially when you're talking about how to develop people in their creative thinking or their leadership skills to be able to spot new opportunities. So creativity is a very, very hard thing to judge as A to B result. But if you've got a business development manager or person who goes away and they just start having crazy ideas, one of them pans out and creates a whole new stream of income. That's because they were being creative in their thinking, and you trained them and you helped them to think that way, spot opportunities. So most of the time in our life, we know that developing people is a really, really good idea because we spend loads of time persuading our children to go to school because we know it's useful to them. We send them to clubs where they learn a skill for a hobby. We do this ourselves. So we know that there's a benefit to it. But we don't necessarily know what the return on investment is going to be. But we know it's valuable. But when it is something which is more abstract, and leadership, more than management, but definitely leadership, you don't necessarily know how to judge that until that leader looks back and thinks, hang on a second, my team are working so much better now because I had an idea about how I speak to them or how I work on motivating them. Because with management, you can say, there's a process. How do we execute this process? But with leadership, it's about communication, it's about influencing, it's about creating leverage to motivate people to use their time and effort and skills. So it's often hard to judge, but this is actually where the biggest value comes from. One idea, and this is what leaders should be doing, directing the direction of a company or of a team, and then being in control of the situation and the process, and that's the management. So these topics have, I think, been massively neglected because of all the things I've spoken about in the last few minutes. But I think there's a change coming. But the change is created by the problems we're seeing because most people haven't had leadership and management training. And it's actually quite hard to put your hand up and say, I don't think I'm a very good leader, or I don't think I'm a very good manager, or I don't even know if I could be better at it. Because we have to look at ourselves and say, am I any good? Or if you have leaders and managers, most of your leaders and managers or C-suite wouldn't turn around and say, actually, I'm not very good. But when I'm working with people and I'm taking them through some very core, basic concepts, deep, very profound, but simple concepts, they say, I've never learnt this before. I've never understood this before. It makes so much sense. It's so much easier now. I can apply this in everything. So understanding people is one of the most important things you can invest in, whether it is for your leaders and managers, whether it's for your salespeople, not just the skills of selling, but understanding people for negotiation, for influencing, for motivating people. Because if you are investing in leadership and management, what you do is you create leverage. I always say a single person cannot create more time. There's only 24 hours a day in a 24 hours in a day. We can't have any more than that. It's finite. But a leader can create more time to action their ideas and their thoughts by leveraging the skills and behaviors and the knowledge of other people in their team. So leadership and management, I think, is coming back. I know it's coming back. I'm seeing it because companies are now seeing the problems of poor leadership and management. It's not a criticism. It's just we're seeing retention being a problem. We're seeing accountability being a problem. We're seeing people not speaking up and not being creative and not getting the best out of the expensive people they pay for. So leadership and management development, I think 20 years ago, there was a lot of problems with it. I think more people were learning it and were being shown this as a normal part of their career. But I think now people are realizing that if you are better, even at the most core concepts, as I said, some of my clients say, this is so easy and obvious now I understand it or even knew it exists. I had one person many years ago who said to me, before I was even on this course, I did not even consider this concept, this word leadership. Even though they were in a leadership position, they did not even think about it. It hadn't crossed their mind because no one has ever told them to think about it, because they were promoted from being a technical expert into being a manager, into being a leader. But they never even thought about it. So there's a lot of people who are underperforming because their leaders and managers don't know how to get the best out of them. Now, if you are into sports, you know the value of a coach or manager, depending whatever title they're given, on that team, on that individual player. I think business is waking back up to that now because we're seeing the problems with people who just never studied leadership and management as a skill. So we know training somebody on a particular piece of software, as I said, is important. But leadership and management is a massively important skill because it gets the best not out of only that leader and keeps them at that level of leadership and management, depending where they are, and stops them getting down into levels of work below their pay grade so they can stay up doing what they should be doing and actually get the best out of their team and make their team happy and enjoy what they're doing and see a future. And funny enough, that solves a lot of accountability and retention problems. So hopefully this has been useful to you. I'm passionate about helping people understand people. If you can understand yourself, you can understand the people in your team. You can communicate better, you can influence better, you can lead them better, you can manage them better. And funny enough, what happens is you get better results. So I hope this has been valuable to you. Please get in touch if you think it seems to make sense, but I don't know where to start because I haven't had any leadership management training and I've perhaps been running a company for a while or been in a leadership position for a while. And you think, I don't know where to start. Well, we'll help you. That's what we're good at. But there's a lot of problems that can be solved by developing leaders and managers. And if you are someone who wants to improve your career, saying to an employer, I've actually learned leadership and management deliberately because I'm ready for the next level. That's such a smart thing to do. So hopefully it's been useful to you. If you've got any questions, any thoughts, there's only a short, as you can tell, I could probably speak for hours on this. But if there's any questions, any thoughts you've got, please get in touch. Inquiries at certainchange.co.uk. There's probably a button to press to send us an email. But please get in touch because it's actually a very, very simple thing to fix and the return on investment is colossal. Thank you for your time and I really hope to speak to you soon.